Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Can I begin by thanking my colleagues from across the Chamber and for those taking part in the debate today for their support for the motion. Can I also welcome to the gallery today members of the Fire Sprinkler Coordination Group, which includes European Fire Sprinkler Network, the National Fire Sprinkler Network, Chief Fire Officers Association, and members of the insurance industry and those from care organisations. Founding members of that group, the British Automatic Fire Sprinkler Association, are hosting a lunchtime event which I hope members will also be able to attend. But I have to say, Presiding Officer, somewhat ironically, this event is being held in the Burns Room, so perhaps, given the topic today, the less said about that, the better. Presiding Officer, no one can forget the tragic deaths at the Rose Park care home in Uddingston in January 2014 that resulted in the death of 14 residents. Sheriff Principal Lockhart's finding at the time after the fatal accident inquiry into the fire, which particularly looked at the cause of death, said that they could have been prevented if the home had had a suitable and sufficient fire safety plan. Something that I trust would not happen today, given that the Scottish Government have published their practical fire safety guidance for care homes in March 2014. And there is no doubt that Scotland has made significant progress in the area of fire safety, prevention and in the use of one of the best protection mechanisms, fire sprinkler systems. I'd like to pay tribute to Michael Matheson, whose private member's bill, Fire Sprinklers in Residential Premises Scotland Bill, paved the way for the significant progress that has been made in Scotland. The Scottish Government commissioned the Scotland Together report in 2009, which concluded that the installation of sprinklers in all Scottish homes was not cost-effective. More recent evidence, including the new UK cost-benefit analysis by the British Research Establishment, does not challenge that underlying conclusion. But BRE have gone on to say that residential sprinklers as an additional safety measure are cost-effective for all residential care homes, elderly children and disabled people, most blocks of purpose-built flats and larger blocks of converted flats, and traditional bedside-type HMOs with at least 6 bedside units per building. Residential sprinklers in two-storey houses that are shared did not meet their cost analysis. We in this place recognise that we cannot make decisions without cognizance of cost. However, Presiding Officer, we should always still be asking the question of what cost is a human life, whether that be a resident, a staff member, or indeed a firefighter, where the dangers to the firefighter are considerably less when they're attending a fire in a property that is fitted with a sprinkler system. In May 2005, the Scottish Government led the rest of the UK by introducing new mandatory building standards requiring the installation of sprinklers in all new build enclosed shopping centres, residential care buildings, care homes and boarding schools and sheltered housing complications, and in high-rise domestic buildings. The installation of sprinkler systems in all new build dwells such as houses was not justified at that time on cost grounds, but we know the Welsh Government, for instance, has taken the decision to install sprinklers in all new build domestic properties. In October 2010, the revised building regulations introduced sprinklers into the domestic handbook guidance as an option to protect common escape routes in low-rise domestic buildings. Sprinklers were also introduced in new primary and secondary schools to support sustainable development by providing enhanced property protection against fire. I'm sure the Minister will touch on some of these areas in his own contribution this afternoon. But in terms of affordable housing, Scotland Together found in 2009 that social deprivation links had an increased risk of fire fatality, with 40% of accidental dwelling and fire deaths occurring within social rented housing and 31% in Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation, 15% in the most deprived areas. And therefore, a targeted approach of installation in social rented council and housing association-owned dwellings was rolled out across Scotland. But I know that particular councils in Scotland, such as Fife and Angus councils, are installing sprinklers in all new build council properties. It's a no-brainer to them to protect not just their residents, but also their financial investment in the new properties. As the chair of the cross-party group on accident prevention and safety awareness, One of the biggest challenges that we have to overcome in the area of fire sprinkler use is the normalisation within our communities of their use. The very fact that both the Scottish Fire and Rescue and BAFSA have myth-busting sections on their websites tells us that the safety advantage, the protection of fire and of property, protection of life and the protection of our fire officers in attending these fires should be at the forefront of our discussions, but we're still talking about the myths surrounding fire sprinklers. If I could quote the BAFSA from their own website, that they say one of the biggest myths is that they're expensive and difficult to fit into existing buildings and thus rarely practical to fit them after initial construction. In order to determine the truth of this, BAFSA funded a pilot project to install sprinklers in a Sheffield tower block. The project proved conclusively that it is possible and cost-effective to retrofit sprinklers into existing high-rise blocks without having to first relocate the tenants or have any major disruption. Some of the other myths are that installations can't be done on a fast-track basis, which has been proven not to be true. The cost as well, but the actual installation cost per flat is about £1,150, and given the effectiveness and both protection of the investment in the property and also always at the forefront the protection of life, I think this is a reasonable cost analysis. Tenants and residents and their families feel safer knowing that they're better protected living in a building with a sprinkler system in place. We also know that the potential trauma and disruptions to individuals following a fire is greatly reduced because the damage from a fire in these types of buildings is very, very much restricted. So retrofitting of sprinklers can be a major refurbishment project. It can be done reasonably, it can be done without major disruption, and it can be done to meet current building standards. I know many care homes and residential properties built and in operation were before these new building standards. I would hope that the message of retrofitting is fully understood and that raising awareness of retrofitting may prompt action to ensure that the very best form of preventative fire protection in the form of sprinklers can be extended to the whole community in Scotland. Thank you.